morning, trailblazers, and I'm excited. In just a little while after we load our four-wheelers into the back of our toy hauler, we are headed up to Bryce Canyon. Again, our second trip for this season. We usually do at least 2 trips up to Bryce, and right now the leaves, I hope, should be turning, and so I'm hoping that we can get some just beautiful scenery up there. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of food preparation this time, and I'll explain that in just a minute. But what I am going to do is make some pulled pork and put it in our thermal cooker. This time I'm not going to use the Saratoga Jack. I got some wonderful suggestions from all of you about how to better use that one, but this time I'm going to use the Stanley. Here is the Stanley. It is a 3-quart. It does not have an inner pot. But the thing that I really like about the Stanley is it has a gasket right here, and it has these lockdown clamps. So, and they really lock down. It also has a little release right here, because the great thing about it, and I learned this from one of our subscribers from Australia, who said that the kind that they use form a vacuum, and that way nothing escapes. As the food cools a little bit, a vacuum is formed. And I thought, well, the Stanley does that. And so last time we had kind of a disaster with the Saratoga Jack, and so this time I'm going to try this. I am going to continue using the Saratoga Jack. I did one batch of food in it, and it worked perfectly, but it just sat here on the counter for 8 hours, 6 hours. So this is a pork shoulder, 2.5 pounds of pork shoulder that I'm just browning. And then my intent is to use a new method for me. I'm taking a risk doing something that I haven't tried out before. I usually try things out first. This is a turkey cooking bag. I'm going to put the meat and the sauce in this turkey cooking bag, and then I'm going to immerse it in water, sort of like you would do sous vide, if you know what kind of cooking that is. And then once it has boiled in this bag for about 15 minutes, to where I'm sure everything is heated all the way through, then I'm going to transfer the bag right here into the Stanley, and then I'm going to fill it with boiling water if there's any room left. And then I'll seal it down, and we will take it with us. Last night I made a batch of King Arthur's beautiful burger buns. It's my favorite recipe for burger buns. I made them in a smaller size, but they still turned out plenty large. So we'll be splitting these buns and having, hopefully, pulled pork when we get to camp. I will put the recipe that I'm using here below in the video description. So here is my menu list as always, and we're going to be doing things like beef and barley soup, chicken chili, chicken pasta bake, and sloppy joes. Now, every one of those meals was one that I recently put in a recipe book. I'm doing a series of books over on Rose Red, and I always put the link to the bookstore so you can see it. And I have a couple of free ones up there that might be worth you checking out. But when we always make every recipe and taste test it, and then there's always a bunch of leftovers. Those have been in my freezer for several months. And so I'm cleaning out my freezer. So I'm taking all of those frozen meals that I've done before. This is the only fresh meal that I'm making, and we'll have it for dinner tonight. So that's sort of where we are. Now, one thing that I am going to do is I fed my sourdough last night, and I've done sourdough recipes over on Rose Red as well. So I'm going to take some of this. It's all bubbly. Look how bubbly that is. Isn't that just great? I am going to do some sourdough pancakes. And so I am going to take some sourdough with us, and it will stay in the fridge until the night before, and I'll show you what I do when we get up there. So I'm just going to move some of this over here Doesn't take a lot. About a half a cup is all. Now the rest of this I'm going to put in the fridge till I'm ready to use it again. And this I'm going to put a lid on and put it in the refrigerator out in the trailer. Okay, we'll come back for the next step on this pulled pork. All right, the meat is in the cooking bag inside here, keeping warm. I don't want to lose any of that heat. So I have 1 cup of pomegranate juice here. I'm just going to put a little bit in the bottom. I want to deglaze the bottom of the pan, pick up all the good stuff that's stuck to the bottom. And I have half of a very large onion, so that's probably a little bit more than a cup. And I'm going to just cook this for a few minutes. So this is a new recipe for me, which I should never do on a video, and it's probably going to fail miserably, but I'm going to try it anyway because it looked really good. My regular recipe wouldn't exactly do well in a thermal cooker, at least I don't think it would. So anyway, these onions look a little strange having been sauteed in the pomegranate juice. They're a little bit purple. Now here's what else I'm going to be adding here. Here's 3 tablespoons of sugar, a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons of ginger, and 2 tablespoons of Chinese 5-spice. That's going in. It smells really good. Everything has to be hot, 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 and we need as much thermal mass as possible. The more thermal mass there is, the longer it will hold the heat. And I'm going to do something else as well to help it hold the heat, because once this gets in the Stanley, no more heat will be added. It's just going to be using the heat that is already in the food, and we need for it to slow cook for the rest of the day without any additional heat. This is thickening up just a little bit, but I'm going to take care of that for sure. I'm going to add the rest of the pomegranate juice, so a full cup of the pomegranate juice. And we have to bring everything to a boil and get it super hot. And then I have some home canned plum sauce. For those of you that have taken the water bath canning class, this is the same plum sauce that we made in that class. And I need a half a cup of this. This is 8 ounces, so I'm just going to pour half of it in. This is really wonderful plum sauce. So it's, of course, a purpley sauce, but you can't really tell that because it's in a black cast iron pan. So we're going to boil this for a couple of minutes, and we'll come back when we're ready to add everything together. All right, I am scooping this sauce out of here and putting it over the meat. Okay, here we have it. Now I'm going to mix this all around, and I want to get as much, very hot, want to get as much air out of this as possible. Air is our enemy. Tighten this up. Okay, Jim got one of those little nylon ties and put on here because I want to take no chances. Now the next thing I'm going to do, I have a pot of water boiling over here on the stove. I'm going to put this down in there and let it heat up so that everything is boiling point for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be back to get it in here, and I'll show you what else we're going to do. All right, I cut this a little bit short because the bag was puffing up so high, and if you take a look at the water, you can see that it's a little bit discolored, which means we've got a hole someplace, which makes me very reluctant to put boiling water in here. So we're just kind of inventing this as we go. All right, what the heck? I'm gonna do it we'll see. It's only going to reduce from here, reduce in temperature. So that will have about 8 hours, 10 hours, between 8 and 10 hours to cook. Now, I've already done some testing on this, and of the ones that I was using, this one held the temperature the best, but I'm going to do a combination. I am going to give it some additional insulation inside this Wonder Bag, and I think that that will hold the temperature better and maybe give us a better chance of having some success here. Okay, so here is our big experiment of the day. We're gonna go load this in the car, get loaded, and head up the mountain, and we will see you tonight as we take this all apart and see if we have a success. All right, we are at camp, and it is 6 o'clock. Time to start getting dinner ready. So I am going to open up our Wonder Bag. We'll take the temperature, and oh my gosh, I hope we are going to have a good meal. So let's get at it. So undoing the bag. It is very hot. I can smell it. I'm going to release the vacuum. The water is still relatively clear. That is a good sign. The temperature is 145, so we are in the safe zone. Anything above 140 is safe to eat. So I'm going to go get a little bowl and we'll see how this is. So the water is very clear. We didn't get any seepage. Okay, now put this over and we will open this up and pour it into the bowl. Now, all right, it is not tender enough to flake. But here it is. It's very dark. All right, I'm going to cut this in little pieces. I just tasted it. It's really, really good. So we'll make dinner out of it. Even though it did not cook to the flake stage, it's still really good. So I'll be back when we're ready to dish this up. All right, here we go. It does look a bit strange, but it is really good. Jim and I have both pre-tasted it. Here's Jim's. Sauce is really good. It's just blackish. Homemade buns. All right, we are now going to have our supper. So I'm going to be making sourdough pancakes in the morning, and I'll bring you back for just how I put it together, not how I make pancakes. Everybody knows how to make pancakes. So see you in the morning. I did mention that I was going to show you how to do the sourdough pancakes, set that up the night before, and instead I have put that over on Rose Red Homestead because we have been doing a series on sourdough over there. So I'm going to put the link to that video in the description of this video so that if you're wanting to see how that turned out, you can just pop right over there. So this is our last meal, evening meal at camp. Tomorrow morning we'll just probably grab a protein drink and then close up shop and head out. And so this is what we're closing off with. So here are the plates. This is some of our Sloppy Joe mix that was in the book on dry mixed meals in jars. This is a leftover. We have been having leftovers from the freezer. So this, Jim and I voted this about the best recipe in that book. We both just loved it. So there is my Sloppy Joe, and here is Jim's Sloppy Joe. Shall I just put it all on, Jim?
Sure, why not?
Okay. And that's the last of the leftovers. Hooray, hooray. So, just a little word about our meal on the pulled pork. It was delicious, absolutely delicious. And we served that with coleslaw and fresh fruit. And I'm going home with some, so that'll be fun to have back at home. Now, this meal we have with cottage cheese and home-canned pineapple. This is salsa, and we have 2 choices of chips because Jim likes corn chips and I like potato chips. And so, this will close out our Bryce Canyon 2 food video. So hopefully we'll get to see you on the trail sometime, and thanks so much for watching.